Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
And greetings. Thank you so much for joining me, Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Herbally Yours brings you the latest information about the many facets in the world of natural living. Today, I'm so happy to have on board our guest, Kam Knight. Kam is a coach, writer, and author of several best-selling books in the area of mental performance, including memory, concentration, and productivity. Growing up, he himself had tremendous difficulty focusing, sitting still, and keeping his mind on his thoughts and his thoughts in his mind. He overcame these difficulties and enjoys sharing the techniques for success that he actually developed with others. Best place to find him is at mindlily.com. That's MINDLILY. So thank you so much for being our guest today, Kam.
Thanks, Ellen. I'm glad to be here.
Now, would you say, you don't say this, but would you say that you were a person when you were a child with what's now known as ADHD?
You know, when I describe what I was going through as a child, that's what a lot of people kind of come to the conclusion, ADHD. But I think it was a little bit more severe than that. Not only was I had my thoughts racing and I had difficulty sitting still, concentrating, and focusing, but I also had my emotions just cycling really intensely. And sometimes I felt like I was just spinning out of control. And when people hear that, they kind of think bipolar as well. And I wouldn't go as far as to say it was a little bit more severe than that. I was just like a mental and emotional mess.
Well, where did you grow up?
I grew up here in the States, in Chicago.
And so did your parents take you for evaluation for these because you're not that old. You know, maybe you think you're old, but you're pretty young next to someone like me. So it seems like you were because I know people my age, like my own husband definitely is ADHD, but he's in his 70s and was never diagnosed. Like his mother would have probably had him on Ritalin. He's happy he missed all that. But someone like yourself, were you diagnosed or brought to professionals when you were young?
No, I was not. So my parents were originally from India, and I had immigrated here when I was 7. So we kind of came from the mindset of no such thing as mental disorders. It was either you were lazy or you had the self-control to kind of manage whatever was going down. And so I think, unfortunately, I was kind of looked at as just a hyper out of control and person who wasn't willing to put in the necessary willpower to maintain the self-control that I was expected to.
So how did you do in school?
You know, early on, I didn't do too well in school, but later I developed a little bit more control and willpower to be able to really hold it together just long enough to be able to study and pass exams. But in the beginning, I mean, my mind was just wandering every which way possible.
And, you know, it's amazing because now you are really a very accomplished person and you have a wide range of books out. Some of them are bestsellers. So tell us how you made that, you know, big jump from having a very severe challenge to someone who is able to concentrate and to the point of being able to write books and share techniques with others.
Well, I'll tell you, it wasn't an easy journey. It was definitely a long journey. And it actually started when I first graduated out of college. I had decided to sit for the CPA exam. And for those who don't know, that stands for Certified Public Accountant Exam. And at the time, it was considered one of the most difficult certification exams to pass. It had a pass rate of 15% on the first try. And so I thought it might be worth my while to learn some study and memory techniques because I figured, considering this is such a intensive exam, if I spend some time up front, it could save me more time in the long run. And that ended up being the case. I learned some really good memory, concentration, mind mapping techniques that helped me out a lot. And I almost passed on the first try. And so that got me thinking, this whole intelligence and memory, the intelligence was overrated. Before that, I thought either you had it or you didn't. And if you didn't, it would severely impact your life. And afterwards, I realized that intelligence could be developed. If somebody learned the right systems, techniques, we can operate just as well, if not better, than the people that we call genius. And the people that we call genius seem to have figured out these things on their own, or their brains just naturally work that way. But again, I realized that if we apply the right techniques, we can operate just as well, if not better. So that kind of got me on a path of just learning more about the mind and how it works. And I came across certain techniques like self-talk and visualization that gave me a lot more self-control of what was going on internally. With self-talk and visualization, you can really kind of go in and rewire your mind as well as your unconscious to kind of operate in ways that if within the statements and images you give it. So that helped as well. And then from there, I just put in more work learning and developing a self-discipline. And here I am doing a radio show with you, Ellen.
It's really great. And I do want to tell people that the layout of your website is so excellent and so clear. It's Mind, M-I-N-D, Lily, Lily.com. Great place to see all your books and your very fascinating story. And we are talking today with our guest, Kam Knight, who's a mental performance coach and author. So one thing that really interested me, Kam, is that I don't know if you've looked at my bio, but I have spent decades living with shamanic healers in the jungles around the world. I've written many books about that, including The Natural Medicine Chest, where I study with them and they share with me many different techniques and herbal remedies and ancient traditional rituals that they use in all kinds of healing. And in your case, I guess you were focusing on what's going on with the mind. But tell me about some of your travels with shamans in the jungles of the Amazon and Africa.
Yeah, so I had spent about a few months in Colombia doing work with a plant called ayahuasca. Have you heard of it?
Of course.
Yes. And as I had mentioned, my healing journey was very long and extensive, and it had started off with studying for the CP exam and learning these memory techniques, and then kind of went into self-talk and visualization, but it wasn't quite where I wanted it. And so I had a mindset that I was willing to try anything and everything, anything that came my way. So when I had started traveling, I, again, had this mindset that whatever came my way, I would give it a shot. So I remember being in Guatemala, and there's a place in part of Guatemala called Atitlan, and where there's just a lot of healers there. And I had heard of different hypnosis and different people doing healing. So I went over there and tried what they had going on. And then when I was in Colombia, I had a friend who owned a finca or a farm, and she would bring over people from around the world to teach them herbal culture. And one time they had said, hey, we want to try an ayahuasca ceremony. And I happened to just be there visiting her when I saw this, and it kind of blew my mind. And I remember meeting the shaman, and when I looked at him, I looked into his eyes, and I was like, wow, this guy is just so centered and so calm and so at peace. And he had told me he'd been doing ayahuasca since 3 years old. And I was kind of shocked because most people who do such medicines, because for those who don't know, ayahuasca is a medicine and also a psychedelic. Most people I knew who were, doing drugs, especially for a long time, they were the opposite of calm. They were, they had weird twitches, they were hyper and all of that stuff. And then when I saw that he had been doing it since 3 years old and he was there, and I'm like, okay, I want what he has. And so I got on a journey of doing ayahuasca, and I was trying to find as many opportunities to do it. So I got opportunities to meet different shamans throughout Colombia, but I wanted to do more. So I got an opportunity to do it with a head shaman, one who actually who teaches other shamans. And so I went into Putumayo, which is the Amazon region, and got connected with this head shaman. And it was an amazing experience. Like, you look into his eyes and you saw the universe. He was kind of on the level of probably Dalai Lama. And I had an experience of being able to do a private ceremony with him, and I wanted to do more. So he passed me off to one of his assistants, and so I worked with him for about maybe 2 weeks straight, just doing ayahuasca on a regular basis, one-on-one. And as I mentioned, it's a pretty intense psychedelic. It really kind of takes you deep into your core and creates healing. And a lot of my healing came through there. Because what's really interesting about the ayahuasca is, many people will say it's like 2 months or 6 months of therapy in like one session. And it literally is. It would like kind of take you into not only the root of your problems, like you kind of actually see the moment your problem stemmed. So it will take you back into your childhood where somebody made fun of you or something happened, and how that seeded as a germ to everything that's going on. And what's even more interesting is that not only will it take you there, but a lot of times it'll just heal it. I felt like a lot of times it would just compartmentalize that thing and just like make it fade away. So it was healing on steroids, if I could put it any other way.
I think that's putting it a great way. Well, we're going to take a little break right here. And when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with our guest, Kam Knight. And Kam will talk about a lot of the fantastic books that you have written. And I'd like to remind you that you're listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Listen live online at nccradio.org or on iHeartRadio. For more information on today's guest or topic, email us at whpc@ncc.edu. Stay tuned. Herbally Yours will be right back.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lanre Falusi with today's tip for kids from the American Academy of Pediatrics. Did you know that tooth decay is an infection? Luckily, cavities are largely preventable. The bacteria that cause cavities pass from parents to children, so good oral health is a family affair. Take care of baby teeth as soon as they emerge by brushing them with a smear of toothpaste with fluoride. Talk with your pediatrician about your baby's oral health and take him to the dentist by age 1. For more, visit healthychildren.org.
And welcome back to more right here on Herbally Yours, brought to you by 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College. And today, our guest is Kam Knight, mental performance coach and author. Kam, thank you so much for sharing with us some of your unusual techniques, both therapy and how you sort of grabbed a hold of yourself and really with some disabilities in place were able to overcome them. And like, obviously, it's not a matter of intellect, but you had problems that might be considered ADHD, bipolar, perhaps even some autistic tendencies that seem to be undiagnosed because of the complexity of your family situation and them not wanting to venture into those areas, but yet you took it upon yourself. And then you shared with us many of the adventures that you went on visiting shamanic healers in various areas of the world and experimenting with plant medicine such as ayahuasca, probably quite a bit of other things, as well as deep spiritual journeys because you also visited ashrams in Asia. But in the end, not that that's over, that part of your journey might be ongoing. But when we look at your books, even just looking at the front of them, they don't really reflect too much of that kind of experience. They look like they're really super laser focused, easy to read, and very, very regimented in their approach of, look, do this, and it's easy.
Yeah. There's a lot of books out there that kind of talk about what to do and how to live your life. And I don't really focus on that too much. I'm not here to tell people what they should or should not do or how they should or should not do it. I focus on the middle ground of getting people to do what it is they want to do, to go from where they are to where they want to be. And so my technique is about helping you apply other techniques, because I think that's what's kind of missing in a lot of personal development content, because we all know what we need to be doing, but the problem is, how can we get ourselves to do it? And so
well,
wait
a minute. I'm going to push back on that. I'm not so sure everybody knows, because these are not things you necessarily are taught in school. Like, look at these fantastic titles. Let's talk about one that's attracting my attention: Mind Mapping. Improve memory, concentration, communication, organization, creativity, and time management. I'm not so sure everybody knows how to do that, or that they even teach that in high school, grammar school, or college.
Yes, you're right. So with those techniques, not a lot of people know, but we all know, like, we need to study to get better grades. Like, we need to work out to be healthy, and we need to do certain things, but how can we get ourselves to do it? And these techniques are the way to do it. And it's really important to really break down the essentials of the techniques down to its most basic and simple elements, because once we know, okay, all I have to do is do this one exercise, and I could start seeing improvements in this area, such as memory or concentration or my reading ability. And then we'll start to see the results that we're trying to get, as opposed to going the other way, which is using a lot of willpower and force to try to get results, which I found wasn't as effective.
So tell us about this book, because maybe you made these covers or you had someone make the covers, but I love mind mapping.
Yeah.
So what is that whole visual supposed to represent, with the planets and all these other things going on there?
Yeah, well, that visual is how to mind map the solar system. More or less, that kind of encapsulate what a mind map is. So a mind map is a note-taking tool where, instead of traditional note-taking where you start line by line and you start at the top of the page, with mind mapping, you don't take notes line by line and you don't start at the top. You actually start in the center and then you work outwards. And a good visual for that is a solar system. You have the sun in the center, and then you have the planets that revolve around the sun. And within the planets, we can detail the features of each planet. For example, Mars is red, has 2 moons, and the reason it's red is because its surface is covered in rusted iron. And so normally when we would write or take notes, we would kind of do it in outline fashion. We would put sun on top, and then each of the planets line by line. And within each of the planets, we would list the details of this planet. But with the mind map, we would start with the main topic in the center. And if we're talking about the solar system, the main topic would be the sun. And then around the main topic, we would list the subtopics. And in this analogy or example, the subtopics would be each planet. And then around the subtopics, we would list out the lower level topics or ideas or details. And in this analogy, around each planet, we would list the specific details about each planet, just like I talked about with Mars, as lower level branches. So it's kind of like a spider diagram that starts in the center and then expands outward.
You know, that's interesting because I do a lot of coaching with people about how to write a book. Because
Yes.
obviously you know that technique. Look at all these wonderful books you've written, like Triple Your Reading Memory and Concentration in 30 Minutes, Goal Setting, Discover What You Want in Life and Achieve It Faster. I mean, really, concentration, very, very focused books. And how I tell people to begin to write a book, because almost everybody you know says they're going to write a book, right? But yet
Yes.
you have done it, as I have.
Yes.
And the technique I tell people to do is the only thing they have to create is time. And then they
Yes.
just have to be sitting in front of their computer, and I have them write whatever they want. It's
Yes.
not like, I never heard this term, by the way, mind mapping. Then later we assemble the table of contents based on what the content is, instead
Yeah.
of trying linearly to write a table of contents or an outline and then write everything in order.
Yes. I'm happy that you say that because there's a lot of talk about starting with the outline first and then putting in what it is you want to write. But that's kind of my approach to writing as well. I try to write as much as possible. And if I can add one other technique is not to censor yourself. Just get as much thoughts and ideas out of your head and onto paper, and then worry about making sure if those ideas make sense and how to organize it.
Where it
In
goes.
fact-
Now, let me tell you, I've been writing books so long, Cam, that I know what cut and paste means, which means lay all the paper on the floor, get a scissor, and then cut the sections, and then repaste them together, and then retype the whole entire thing. So thank God we have moved beyond that. So that's why this write whatever and then organize technique is so fantastic nowadays.
Yeah. And if I can add one more thing, one thing I teach as well, because I do teach people how to write, is for authors, your job as an author, your only job is to put words on paper. That's it. Worry about the rest later.
Yes. I agree,
Yeah.
because you're giving such great and simple instruction with your books. Now, let's talk about like goal setting. That's a very important book. People struggle with that really at every age. Of course, when you're younger and like, what are you going to do with your life? But now also when people retire, they feel very lost.
Yeah. So goal setting is kind of become one of those things, one of those words where you hear it and then you just tune out because it's a word that we've heard so much times and it's a word that we tried and it didn't work for us or whatnot. And, the goal setting was one of my earlier books because that was one of the key things that helped me in addition to the self-talk and visualization was writing and setting goals. And there's two main things that I really want people to understand about of making goal setting really effective. One is that you want to break down your goal as much as possible down to a specific step. So you'll start with a big goal of, say, let's write a book. And then you'll break that goal down into steps of how you're going to do it. Like create an outline, write a rough draft, do a brain dump. And then you take those steps and you break it down even more of what that's going to entail. And you keep breaking it down until it gets down to something as simple as dial this number and talk to this person. And when one could do that, it makes, and when we can do that and just focus on the individual steps, it makes us achieving those goals easier. But the real secret to goal setting is not about what you're going to do or what you have to do, but what you're going to give up in order to have the time, energy to be able to achieve those goals. I think a big half of goal setting is about what is we need to pretty much know that we can no longer have if we work on this goal.
Right, like you have to watch less TV or something. Something's got to give, right? Yeah. Now, What is your website, which is mindlily.com, is so beautifully laid out. I'm wondering if you did it yourself. It's extremely clear. Like it vibrates with what I would say clarity rather than complexity. It's so easy to use. And on each book, when you click on it, you have an intro that people can listen to. You have a outline of all the chapter content, and it's like such an easy website to navigate. Where did you get the word Mind Lily? MINDLILY. What does that mean to you?
All right. Well, thank you for the feedback on the website. I did do that website myself, and I do focus on clarity, trying to get rid of everything but the essential points and details, and even with my content, the essential exercises are going to help. But Mind Lily, really comes down to I'm a mental performance expert, so I talk a lot about the mind. But the lily is the flower blooming. So Mind Lily is like the mind blooming, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. It's a very, very good visual. So we're going to be ending here shortly, but tell me which is your favorite book? Can you just shout that out or no? Because there's so many choices here.
Yes, I can say my favorite book is the one that you mentioned earlier, Concentration. Concentration, maintain laser sharp focus and attention for stretches of 5 hours or more. And this work is my deepest work. Concentration isn't an easy thing to develop. And a lot of content doesn't really focus too much on going in and developing it, but really focusing only on managing distraction. And this goes really deep into the psychology of the mind of why concentration is difficult, what makes it so challenging, and how to understand what we do and why we do the things we do to improve better focus. It really encapsulates my entire journey of healing, which has spanned over 15 years, and my journey across nearly 100 countries. And that book is really a distillation of all my efforts in the personal development realm.
Well, it's beautiful. And, I love that circle, I have to say, on the front of it, which is a focus point and also reminds me, since you're of Indian descent, of like a bindi. So on the third eye. So it just reminds me of that too. But that's a very beautiful, very clear, very, very clear cover. And then if someone clicks on it, they get an outline of those chapters and what they would get by reading it. So, and of course, starting with I can't concentrate. So many people say that, especially nowadays in the world of constant texting and visual and audio input. So I want to thank you so much for being our guest today. We are at the end of our show. Thank you so much for being our guest today. And you've been listening to Kam Knight, mental performance coach and author. Find him at mindlily, MINDLILY.com. And we want to thank you so much for joining us today on Herbally Yours, produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, email us at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamhi at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.